You know, and we're talking here about partnerships, and I think we've talked a lot about the impact that our partnership together has had. But when the Biden administration came into office, we inherited a resettlement infrastructure across the U.S., the infrastructure that resettles both those that come to the U.S. with SIVs and those that come in as refugees, that was significantly degraded. We had people in the government who had been laid off that do this work. Many of the resettlement offices across the U.S., a third of them, in fact, had been closed. So we think about what this felt like. We had 60,000 Afghan allies on our bases domestically and overseas. We needed to get them quickly into new homes and new communities across the U.S. where they could thrive and start their new lives in the United States. And so we needed partnerships within government to break down the silos that made this process slow and inefficient. And we also needed partnerships across the country to expand our capacity. So the Resettlement Branch that Sean mentioned is an innovation that we came up with within government. And our resettlement process, you know, it includes the State Department, includes the Department of Homeland Security, includes the Department of Health and Human Services. But as you can imagine, you know, if someone's case requires action by one of those three departments, it might linger in someone's email box for a day or two before it gets moved on to the next department. So we said, let's take representatives from each of those three agencies and let's create a branch called the Resettlement Branch, and they will sit together every day and work through cases and work through issues. And they did, because they could just turn to each other and have snap meetings and help resolve problems. And that really sped up the government's handling of the resettlement process. But like I mentioned, you know, our federal capability to resettle people had been seriously degraded. So we weren't going to be able to replace that capacity overnight. It would take time to bring on more people across the formal resettlement infrastructure. So we partnered with state and local governments. We partnered with veterans groups. We partnered with faith organizations. We partnered with civic organizations and service organizations. And we really saw an outpouring of support from Americans across the country. We saw states like Colorado and Oregon that used their emergency response systems to help provide support for Afghans. We saw cities in Texas that were innovative. We saw cities like Tulsa that welcomed refugees in ways that were really kind of very innovative and revolutionary. And so I think out of this, we all saw that there was this heretofore untapped desire by Americans across the U.S. to help resettle refugees and our Afghan allies.